From the Detroit Free Press, I'm Robin Chan with today's Voice Briefing. It's Friday, April 19th, 2024.
I'm Violet Ekonomova, a Free Press investigative reporter. Why were they shot? That's the question my latest investigation raises about survivors of 10 Detroit police shootings. Police said they shot the men because they feared for their lives. But none of the shooting survivors were either charged with a crime or convicted of the conduct cops said prompted them to open fire. Some were unarmed, like Keith Davis, an 18-year-old shot in the chin after a cop driving around with his gun in his lap first shot himself in the foot, then mistook the sound of his own gunfire for a threat from elsewhere. More commonly, the survivors were armed and running away from attempted stops for nonviolent offenses. At least 4 were shot in the back of the body. We undertook this first-of-its-kind analysis because police are so rarely charged with any wrongdoing in shootings across the board. Nationwide, just 2% of cops are charged when they shoot and kill someone. In Detroit, no officer has been charged in a shooting in over a decade, a period in which they've shot more than 125 people. And department discipline is extremely rare. We zeroed in on shootings with survivors to help us establish a rate at which DPD shootings may have been unjustified. Over a recent 7-year period, more than a third of Detroit police shootings did not end with those shot convicted of what they'd been accused of. The police department stood by decisions to clear the officers of any wrongdoing.
I'm Frank Witzel with the Detroit Free Press. Taylor Swift's latest album, The Tortured Poets Department, or TTPD on social media, is expected to drop first thing Friday, just after midnight Eastern Time Zone. And maybe you're not a Swiftie and have never, ever listened to her music, but if you know a Swiftie, your child, spouse, friend, or someone you'd like to get to know better and want to be able to engage in conversation, here's a short guide that, if it's the only thing you read, could help you out. This isn't an all-you-need-to-know guide to Tay-Tay, but it offers just enough information so maybe you can keep up or at least avoid an awkward slew of questions like, for starters, who's Tay-Tay? That tends to end with the person you're trying to impress replying, this is just too much to explain. Swift and her international army of fans who call themselves Swifties, note, Swifties with an I-E, not Y, have a lot of nicknames for their favorite artist, who many consider a poetic genius. Tay-Tay is one nickname. There's a lot online about how Swift songs have struck a chord over the years with a segment of America, especially it seems girls and young women. One explanation for why her songs resonate is because they often express deep emotions that are difficult to openly discuss. Among them, love, heartbreak, and the angst of adolescence and adulthood. Some fans have developed a whole lexicon out of Swift lyrics, a kind of shorthand that, if you aren't a Swiftie, you won't understand at first, or perhaps ever.
For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Eric D. Lawrence. Bill Ford says he was alarmed years ago when he realized that mobility innovation and the investment that follows weren't happening in Detroit. They were happening in places like Silicon Valley instead. So he set out to change that, and the result will soon be open to the public when the Michigan Central Station gets its grand reopening on June 6th. The executive chair of the Ford Motor Company and the great-grandson of Henry Ford, speaking at a Detroit Free Press Breakfast Club event in Birmingham, Michigan, April 17th, says your, quote, jaw will drop, end quote, when you see the transformation of what had been a symbol of blight for decades. The station, he says, couldn't just be a renovation, though. Quote, it had to be the place where the future of transportation was reinvented one more time and that the Motor City became the Motor City again, end quote, Ford says, noting that, quote, we're in a war for talent. Michigan is. Our industry is. Ford is, end quote. In the years to come, Ford clearly believes the station that earlier generations arriving in Detroit viewed as their Ellis Island should help attract the talent that this region and the auto industry that's here need to compete in the mobility space.
Find more from the Detroit Free Press on freep.com. That's FREEP.com. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend, and you'll hear more from us Monday.